Okay, hi World Civ guys. Today we're going to finish up this unit in preparation for your test on Friday. Last thing you do before the weekend, test on Friday for the semester. So let's get started, shall we? We were talking about Napoleon. We're finished. After exiling Napoleon, European leaders at the Congress of Vienna of 1815, Congress of Vienna was a meeting of the great powers at Vienna, tried to restore order and establish peace. After Napoleon's first defeat at the Battle of Leipzig, the leaders of Europe met for months and the Congress of Vienna to try to control the damage that Napoleon and the French Revolution had brought to Europe. I mean, all these pesky little ideas like freedom, you know. And so, most of the agreements of the Congress were negotiated by the five great powers. Who were they? There was, of course, Great Britain. There was, of course, Russia, who had defeated Napoleon. There was, of course, Austria. And there was, of course, Prussia. And finally, believe it or not, they even invited France, because France was still a great power. The following individuals. Look, I've even written it down for you. Clemens von Metternich, he was the Austrian foreign minister. See with this? Know the following individuals who are important at the Congress of Vienna. Clemens, and I'm trying to be fast. Clemens von Metternich, who Austrian foreign minister, he wanted to stamp out any and all ideas of the French Revolution. I'm going to leave this landmine here. You don't have to worry about it. But yeah, maybe in a future year. Viscount Castlereagh, the British Prime Minister, who wanted to ensure the balance of power. And Maurice, some call me the Space Cowboy, some call me the Gangster of Love. Some people call me Maurice de Talleyrand. I'm being funny. Maurice de Talleyrand represented France. And it says that they might call him the chameleon, as it says, because he kept switching sides. I mean, he began in politics prior to the French Revolution as a member of the nobility. He survived the French Revolution. He was a member of the Directory. He then was on the staff of Napoleon, and here he is at the Congress of Vienna. I mean, he kept switching sides. And then Tsar Alexander I. The Tsar who defeated Napoleon and now wanted to be rewarded. And so, yeah. Now, this is a lot not on your book, but on your test. The two goals of the Congress of Vienna. One, to redraw the map of Europe. Redraw the map of Europe. They wanted to redraw the map of Europe so that France would be surrounded by a buffer zone of smaller countries that would protect the major countries. You know, the smaller countries, kind of like putting rubber around something that has sharp edges. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, my son just had his first child, and they have furniture, and you can buy rubber and put all around the furniture so the child doesn't whack its head against the furniture. Yeah, a buffer. And so they create these small countries to be a buffer. The map was redrawn to compensate the victor nations of Europe who had fought against Napoleon. Austrian Netherlands and the Dutch Republic were united to form the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Then a group of 39 German states were loosely joined together as the newly created German Confederation, which in 50 years would become the German Empire. Switzerland was recognized as an independent nation. The Kingdom of Sardinia was given to the Italian city of Genoa. Britain was also given islands. Britain was always cashing in. Helgoland, Malta, which is in the middle of the Malta, which is in the middle of the Mediterranean, and also the southern tip of Africa. Norway was taken from Denmark and given to Sweden. Why? Because Denmark helped Napoleon, Sweden had not. Russia was given Finland and more Polish territory. Once again, it was a reward. And they also wanted to reestablish the balance of power that had been upset by the French Revolution and by Napoleon, and to stamp out the leftover remains of the ideas of the French Revolution and its democratic ideas that they considered dangerous, and to preserve this thing called the balance of power. Once again, the balance of power, quite simply, is to make sure that no one became too powerful and threatened the others. So once again, why didn't the victorious nations of Europe and the Congress really punish France? Well, because they could have stomped France into the ground, but they didn't want France to be too weak, because who knows, one day you might want France to be your ally. What were the weaknesses of Congress of Vienna? It ignored the new forces of nationalism, all the little peoples, the Poles, the Magyars, Czechs, Serbs, Italians, Hungarians, who wanted their independence. Legitimacy. Legitimacy means the right of a government to rule. The Congress of Vienna was a success in many ways. Its powers cooperated for the first time ever to achieve peace in Europe. It did. It created what was called the Century of Peace. None of the powers of Europe will engage in war for 40 years, and there'll be no major wars in Europe for 100 years. This is what is called the Century of Peace. What events end the Century of Peace in 1914, children? 1914, the beginning of World War I. Yeah, catastrophe. Make note of this, that as a person travels from west to east in Europe, the governments and society become increasingly more conservative and increasingly less profitable. The standard of living drops, the literacy rates drop. In other words, at this point in time, Western Europe was a better place to live than Eastern Europe, and to be frank, still is. From the constitutional monarchies of Britain and France to the outright peasantry of Russia and slavery of the Ottoman Empire, the rulers of Europe were very suspicious, very nervous about the legacy of the French Revolution, and they took steps to make sure that French Revolution would never happen again. One, by creating the Holy Alliance, as they call themselves, of Russia, Prussia, and Austria. Tsar Alexander I, of course, ruled Russia. Francis I of Austria and Frederick III of Prussia. What was the purpose of this alliance? To make the world safe for monarchy. Why was it called the Holy Alliance? One reason is three, like the Holy Trinity. But another was because the monarchs believed that God had ordained monarchies, and therefore they considered themselves holy, and democracy unholy. The concert of Europe. Much of the Europe was still split by political contention, the ideas of the French Revolution and democracy versus the ideas of the old monarchies. The old monarchies intended to survive at the expense of the welfare and well-being of the lower classes, as well as the liberal hopefuls. So the French revolutions and the Napoleonic Wars weakened the Spanish Empire and provided a prime opportunity for the fledgling colonies of Latin America to rise up and revolt. See, the problem was that in Latin America was divided into basically classes. At the top were these peninsulares. Peninsulares were people, let's spell, shall we? I apologize to you, Mr. Horton. Yes, why is that?
Leaving that Coca-Cola thing on your desk.
Oh, don't worry about that.
I thought about that when I was home. How you doing today?
I'm all right. I'm in the middle of teaching, but I'm okay.
All right.
Yeah, Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo. No. Cinco de Mayo does not refer to Mexican independence, even though people do say it is. Cinco de Mayo, yes, is the 5th of May, and actually, Cinco de Mayo is from 1862. But Mexico gained its independence in 1821. Brazil also declared independence from Portugal. Okay, what was the long-term legacy of the Congress of Vienna? Most nations of Europe would be trying to limit the power of France. Britain and Prussia would increase in power, and nationalism would be a growing force. Nationalism is the idea that everyone, all ethnicities, should have their own country. Um, Nationalism and its ideas would spread to Germany, Italy, Greece, and other nations that had been placed under foreign control at one point in time or another. The revolutions of 1830 and 1848 would explode from out of this discontent. Many colonies would gain independence from this movement. More and more people saw democracy as a way to attain equality and justice for all, but not right away. Now, I really hurried through that, and I'm sorry for that. But the reason is because I want to make sure that we finished today. And I think that we did that. So, yes, thank you all very much.